As we continue on the series of doing the season reviews for every team as we approach the draft, I'm sure everyone could have guessed it, today we have the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks were coming off a season in which they went 39-43 and ended up losing in the play-in. This was after they traded away Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis in the middle of the season there. Kind of caught everyone by surprise, especially seeing as the trade came in at 1 a.m. or something like that, something stupid. Despite being in the play-in, the Mavs defied all odds, won the draft lottery, and ended up selecting Cooper Flagg in the NBA draft. Also in the offseason, they re-signed Kyrie Irving, as well as Dante Exum, who both ended up missing the entirety of this year. They extended Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, and Dwight Powell exercised his player option. After free agent signings, they brought in D'Angelo Russell to sort of run that point guard, as there was a clear hole in the roster for that point guard area. This was a move that I was actually kind of happy with, especially seeing as D'Angelo Russell had been struggling the last couple of years, kind of been bouncing around the league, getting traded around. Couldn't really find a home where he could really stand out, solidify himself, but I thought coming in under Jason Kidd was going to be huge for him. Boy, was I wrong. The only loss in free agency was Spencer Dinwiddie. He played some minutes last year, sort of does his role everywhere he goes. He can kind of pop off and be a player that stands out. He can also be a player that looks unplayable. So, it was a Spencer Dinwiddie experience. Nothing too major there. Ended up going to Charlotte and getting waived, so not too big of a loss for them. Coming into the season, they were ranked number 13 in the power rankings, so there was clearly belief that AD and Flagg would be able to keep the Mavericks afloat and competitive until Kyrie returned. This was assuming he was going to return in the new year as he was expected to. And once he did return to this expected competitive team, that trio would be able to keep them in the hunt for the playoffs, especially with the supporting cast like PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, all those guys they were going to have there. Najee Marshall's another guy I should mention as well. Seeing as it was a roster of players that had been to the playoffs before with Luka at the helm, they thought that the combo of AD and Flagg would be something that could help them sort of get there. If you ask me, I don't know why they ranked so high. I didn't think it was going to be a great season for them, especially with no Kyrie and Anthony Davis's injury history. I kind of figured they would be a team that was going to be missing the playoffs. So number 13 in the power rankings was kind of high, in my opinion. As we move into the season story, they ended up going 9-16 in their first 25 games. During this time, they were kind of trying to figure out who was going to run that point guard for them. They started running Flagg at the point guard, who honestly, he struggled. He didn't look like this generational prospect everyone thought he was, because it wasn't natural for him. It was an unnatural position for him to play in. Then they tried D'Lo at the point guard, and honestly, he was struggling. He had some really big games, some high point, high assist games. Shooting efficiency was up and down. It was mostly down, but honestly, the bad heavily outweighed the good in this experiment. It was unfortunate to see as someone who is a D'Angelo Russell fan. They ended up giving undrafted Ryan Nembhard a shot. That one stuck for a bit. He was facilitating at an insane level, especially for a rookie, showing off real flashes of being someone who could be a true point guard in the league. Maybe not a starter anywhere, but definitely a depth piece somewhere as a point guard. He's just one of those players that he finds people in their spots and gets them open, and he gets the ball to their hands in the right area for them to hit their shots. He's a point guard that I definitely think will be around for a while. Kind of like his brother. A little bit more point guard than his brother is. His brother's a little more attacking defense. Ryan Nembhard's kind of more looking to get everyone else a shot as opposed to himself. Anthony Davis only played in 10 of the first 25 games with a 1-month absence after 5 games. He ended up only playing in 10 more games after that, and health was becoming a major issue. He had that one injury I know everyone saw. He brushed his hand off someone and then went down, and it ended up being an injury that was super serious. And yeah, I'm sure it's Anthony Davis. They call him Anthony Day to Davis for a reason. Derek Lively only played in 7 of those games. Honestly, he didn't look incredible. It seems like he's kind of taken a step back since his rookie season, but honestly, he's had so many short seasons, I don't even blame him. It's probably so hard for him to get in a groove, especially with him missing so much time. I even wrote down here, another short season for the young big man. It's tough. He ended up only playing in 7 games before going down and getting that season-ending foot surgery. It's just really unfortunate for a player like him. He's so young. He's shown so many flashes of just that raw talent that can sort of help him develop into one of those defensive-minded rebounding centers, like a Tyson Chandler type of guy. I say Tyson Chandler because he was on the Mavs, but like someone that's going to go catch lobs, block shots, get rebounds, just battle down low. It's really unfortunate to see for someone especially as young as him, as I said before. In the absence of Anthony Davis and Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford provided the typical Daniel Gafford things. High percentage finishing around the rim, caught lobs, super aggressive on the boards, holding the paint on defense. Just providing great minutes as a role player, which he typically does. And honestly, he's a guy that I think any team that needs a center, he could help out on any team. The Mavs obviously locked him out for a little bit, and he's been there. But yeah, I think Daniel Gafford's one of those guys that you kind of know what you're going to get from every night or on a night in, night out basis. And for the most part, it's good. I mean, he has some moments, but PJ Washington also helped out there, provided some minutes at the small ball 5 to give some relief to Gafford, especially with the team's only other option being Dwight Powell and Moussa Cisse. Honestly, Moussa Cisse had those games. He looked pretty solid, especially for a guy that isn't really getting minutes. He I think he knew that if he's going to be on the floor, he's going to play hard. He's going to work his ass off out there. And it was kind of fun to watch him in those games. He was getting lots of minutes. Just a long, super raw big that's going to go out there and just do what the coach tells him to. I'm sure you're all wondering, what about Cooper Flagg? He struggled early. He was being forced to play out of position. Everyone noticed it. The media noticed it. I'm sure he noticed it. But once AD went down, it kind of allowed him to slide over that 3-4 area, a more natural area for him, and he looked phenomenal. Really got into his groove, knocking down shots, playing defense, rebounding, passing a little bit. And during this time, he very quickly shot up to the top of the Rookie of the Year race. Looked like a absolute stud, as everyone was expecting from a guy like Cooper Flagg coming into the year. As they went into the deadline, they were sitting at 19 and 32. Still kind of competitive, obviously on the outside looking in, but still getting some wins here and there, being competitive. The season was very quickly going in a direction that didn't really give Kyrie Irving any need to come back or rush back. Kind of getting away from them, but not super getting away from him. And it was looking like the fans and the organization was not going to see Kyrie Irving suit up and be on the court at all this year. And honestly, I don't blame him. He coming off a torn ACL, it was kind of like a gap year for him. Why not take the whole year to sort of sit out and really recover, do that rehab, get better, especially for a guy like Kyrie, who's super mobile, super agile on his feet, known for those crafty finishes and getting by defenders with his dribble moves. There was no rush for Kyrie to come back, and I honestly don't blame him for not coming back at all this year. One thing that I missed that I definitely should mention is during this first half of the season stretch when they were kind of struggling and being a little bit competitive, not super competitive during all these injuries, I think it also lines up with Anthony Davis' injuries, funny enough. Nico Harrison ended up getting fired November 11th, a move that everyone expected, honestly. He was absolutely the most hated man in Dallas during his time, especially from I think it was trade deadline February last year until November 11th. I mean, he's probably still is the most hated man in Dallas, but I don't think he's there anymore. So yeah. Something I wanted to mention that I just hadn't mentioned yet. Nico Harrison fired November 11th. I think during this time was when the front office kind of realized where they were and the direction they were kind of heading in, and ended up pulling the trigger on a trade that shocked the league. Nobody was expecting it when they sent Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum to the Wizards for Chris Middleton, Marvin Bagley III, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, 2 first-round picks, and 3 second-round picks. This move allowed them to focus on the young guys like Christie and Flagg. Christie got a lot more confidence during this time. Jumper began to improve. He'd been struggling early on with streaky shooting. Wasn't looking like the Christie that we saw at the end of the last season, where he was kind of popping off a little bit when he had all opportunity in Dallas. Was able to take a lot of shots. Yeah, he came into the year, looked a little rusty. But this stretch, when they were really letting the young guys rock, giving them the starting minutes, he was really starting to get comfortable alongside Flagg there. And on the topic of Cooper Flagg, he continued to absolutely dominate. Looked like a player that will be an all-star for many, many years to come. Honestly, playing like a seasoned vet in his rookie year. He was incredible. I don't know what else to use to describe his rookie year. He was incredible. A player that I want to mention that really kind of excelled during this time was Najee Marshall. He was given the opportunity to run some minutes at point guard, and it resulted in him having the best year of his career statistically wise. Counting stats were up all across the board. There was some talks about him being traded at the deadline, especially with how high his value was due to this high level of play. But the front office ultimately ended up just sticking with him, riding with him, let him just kind of rock out the rest of the year. I mean, they have him on that contract. He's not super old, so there's really no reason to rush him out. He was beneficial for the team. I mean, he was winning them games I'm sure they didn't want to win, but he was just kind of rocking out, getting his confidence alongside Flagg. Became a fantasy monster. Anyone that got him on their fantasy team was probably super happy with what he was doing. It's just showing that kind of Swiss Army knife kind of player that he is when they got him from the Pelicans there. They rounded out the season at 26 and 56 after winning just seven games after the deadline. So you could tell they kind of committed to this tank to try and get up in the draft boards. They didn't get too high, but they still ended up being in the lottery there, which is what they wanted. Some players I mentioned that I haven't really talked about. I mean, the first guy I kind of talked about a bit earlier was PJ Washington. He was in and out of the lineup this season, a little bit of injury things, but when he's on the floor, he's super impactful on both sides. He's really getting comfortable there in Dallas. I know he struggled for a bit his last couple of years in Charlotte, but he's really getting back to that groove in Dallas here. Impactful, like I said, on both sides of the ball. As per usual, getting paid $20-ish million a year for the next 4 years on this ascending deal. I think it's super fair for what he provides. Honestly, super fair for what he provides. He's definitely going to gather some interest on the trade market. I don't think he's able to be traded for a little bit just because of when he signed his extension, but he's definitely going to gather some interest on the trade market. And with the new management that's coming in, they may look to move him just because he's a little bit older, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kept him around or even mad about it, especially beside Flagg. I think they kind of complement each other. They don't really get in each other's way. They look like they're able to play off each other there. I mean, they can both stretch out. They both rebound. But they don't really do anything as individual players that would really conflict each other. They kind of can play together, especially when you have PJ running some small ball 5. Let him go down low and let Cooper Flagg kind of space out. I think PJ Washington can stick around in Dallas and be no problem. Next up, we have Klay Thompson. It has already come out that they're going to kind of look to trade him. He's definitely a guy that can still provide a shooting threat on the perimeter. Absolutely. One of the best shooters ever in the NBA. but the defense has definitely slowed down. He's no longer that all-defensive guy that he was in Golden State. A contending team will definitely take a swing at him just because of what he can provide on the offensive side, and he can still guard up a little bit. It's just not the same after those injuries and the age. But a contending team is definitely going to send an offer over to Dallas. This might not be what they were going to be able to get from him a couple of years ago, but they'll get something for him in return. I just don't think they'll keep him around. He's getting up there in age, and I think we're kind of seeing the direction Dallas is going in towards the youth movement a little bit. So there's no need to have Klay Thompson around there. Last but not least, Brandon Williams. What a player. Brandon Williams was given an opportunity at the end of last season and really capitalized on it. He continued to capitalize on it this year. He was providing offensive spark either off the bench or as a starter whenever they needed it. He played himself into a contract next season at least, and I wouldn't even be surprised if he played himself into a contract extension for a couple of years, a multi-year extension. Whether it's with Dallas or somewhere else, he's proved that he can be a player in the league. He's mostly going to be probably coming off the bench anywhere else, but he's definitely a guy that will come in, provide you an offensive spark, and just do what the coach tells you to. I mean, he has this turnover and inefficiency issues at times, but when he's on, and he looks like a regular in the league. Kind of came out of nowhere there when he signed to Portland, hit those threes. Everyone remembers the graphic of Brandon Williams. It was like Damian Lillard threes it was Steph Curry threes versus Brandon Williams threes that one game. Look where he's come now. Now he's a guy that people actually talk about as a rotational player in the league. Kind of cool to see that story all come together there. Looking ahead, as I mentioned earlier, the Dallas Mavericks ended up in the lottery. They ended up getting the number 9 pick, which I assume they're going to go after a guy like Braden Burns or Michael Brown. I think it was Michael Brown that came out and said he loves Dallas. So I wouldn't be surprised if they really try and go after them and get their guy, fill that point guard void. But these are 2 point guards that should easily be on the board for them in that range, and they'd fit nicely. They also have the number 30 pick and can go in any direction. It's a super deep draft. I assume they go best player available here to sort of fill one of those areas of need. But they absolutely will be going point guard at the number 9 pick, especially to get a young guard to sort of pair with Cooper Flagg there. The Mavericks offseason really kicked off when they hired Masai Ujiri as team president and alternate governor, and he's been very, very vocal about wanting to build around Flagg. And after what he did in Toronto, I'm sure all the Mavs fans are super happy. I mean, even the media reactions, everyone's like, whoa, the Mavericks really got the guy that's going to turn this team around and really focus on building this youth movement around their young star franchise player. They also brought in Mike Schmitz as GM, a guy that comes from Draft Express. He was also with Portland as the assistant GM, I believe. He has a long track record of scouting and being able to find those guys in the draft. He has a lot of tweets about guys he thought would hit and miss, and he's been pretty accurate on all of them. So I think having a guy like that as your GM will be huge for you in the draft. Not sure what he's like as a free agent kind of guy, but I'm sure he's figured it out while he was there in Portland. The most recent news is they fired Jason Kidd. I wonder if this means that they're going to be leaning towards a new rejuvenated team and could lead to selling off some more of these vets. Especially like a sign and trade for Middleton, as well as something that's come up recently is people are getting worried about this whole Kyrie trade. A lot of Mavs fans I've seen are kind of scared that the notification is going to hit that Kyrie's gone. I know he loves it in Dallas. It's pretty clear he loves it there. He's been vocal about it. But I think with this whole firing of Jason Kidd, we might see more of these vets kind of go along with him somewhere. I mean, they can get a ton of value for Kyrie, and they're probably going to get something for Middleton. Middleton proved he can still be a scorer and a vet piece and play both sides of the ball a little bit. So those are 2 guys I think might be gone, especially with this Jason Kidd news. The Anthony Davis trade, they kind of just brought in a lot of expiring salaries. Dallas kind of went from dancing around the luxury tax line and being around the first apron to roughly $38.6 million under the luxury tax and 2 roster spots to fill in free agency. And they'll have the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception of roughly $50 million to spend there. So they'll probably go after some older guys, some vet pieces that can kind of be either a depth piece to provide something or more like a mentor in the locker room. Kind of pieces like that with that money. The extensions will kind of focus on Derek Lively being the biggest question mark, especially with his health concerns. Not sure what direction they go there. He will probably get one just because of the raw talent he's shown, but I don't know how big it will be. Just because, as I mentioned, those injury concerns and health concerns, he's had a lot of short seasons in his young NBA career. But guys like Najee Marshall and Max Chrisley are both really strong candidates for extensions there. I think the extension amount would be at a reasonable value based on how they perform this year, but they're both eligible for extensions of $90 million for 4 years. It is a little bit high for both of them, but we don't know anything about what this front office is going to do. So they could honestly throw that money at them, or they could be like, no, we don't want to pay you anything. I think it'd be stupid not to pay them anything, and I doubt they do that, but we honestly have no idea what this front office is going to do. When it comes to role player decisions, with Brandon Williams being a super cheap backup option, I think it's a no-brainer to bring him back. He's going to get offers from other teams, I think Dallas should really try and hop on it early and bring him back. Ryan Nembhard will likely be retained on the team option, especially what he showed to be a backup point guard and start if you really need him to. Dwight Powell is a near the end of the rotation kind of guy, but he's a Mavs lifer. I don't know if you can really let him walk. I feel like he's going to end up being one of those Udonis Haslem players that just kind of sticks around forever. But who knows what Masai and Mike Schmitz think of him. They might just be like, no, you got to get out of here. You're not really doing much for us. But I honestly think he's going to kind of be there for a while. Last but not least, we have Marvin Bagley III. He's a guy that I can definitely see returning as a cheap front court depth piece kind of guy. A guy that they might consider bringing around just because he isn't too old. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that they can return on a cheap front court depth kind of contract, maybe like a minimum contract. He's shown that he can play. I mean, he's been on bad teams the last few years, and I know he's that number 2 pick label kind of just hanging over him the whole time. But he's a guy that they could probably offer and bring him back. The last thing I kind of want to touch on is the trade flexibility. It's going to be a major theme this offseason for the Dallas Mavericks. I believe everyone outside of Flag is theoretically movable, depending on the new front office's vision, which I think is just built around Flag. So kind of reinforces the fact that everyone outside of Flag is really on the trade market right now. They also have a large trade exception available for them to use, so they can definitely throw that in there to make some contracts work and the money work and match up and everything there. So yeah, I think the Dallas Mavericks might be pretty active in this offseason. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think we can kind of figure that we're going to be seeing the Dallas Mavericks pop up in quite a few trades this offseason. Overall, Dallas is in a really rare position. They just had a losing season, but they still have a franchise cornerstone with Cooper Flag and currently still Kyrie Irving, whatever they choose to do with him, with great supporting pieces there. They have a real pathway back to the playoffs, especially next season. I don't think it's title contention, but they definitely have a real pathway there to find themselves back in the playoffs, especially in this deep Western Conference. But at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to what Mike Schmitz and Masai Ujiri can cook up this offseason, and they're really going to have to nail it if they want to get back to that playoff spot.